Did you ever wish that you had that one special person in your life who was really good with money? They'd figured out how to make more, keep more, and find their way around the mysterious corners of our financial lives that a lot of us get trapped in? That special friend who could show you the way to actually take control of your money and make it work for you? She's out there. And if you haven't found Vivian too, aka Your Rich BFF, yet on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or the podcast Net Worth and Chill, then you are probably not scrolling in the right places. If you care about money, that is. She's built an audience of millions, generated billions of streams, but most importantly, helped countless people get smarter about their money. We love friends like that at Investopedia, and we're happy to finally make friends with Viv too right here on the Investopedia Express. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is so good to be here. We've been following you for such a long time, and we love what you're doing out there. But tell us your origin story. You worked on Wall Street. You were on that path right across the street here down on Wall Street. What made you jump off?
You know, I was trading equities at JP Morgan. This was my dream job. I had gone to school, UChicago in particular, an economics-focused school, and I thought, I made it. It was amazing. And it was for the first year and a half until I realized Wall Street isn't what it used to be, one, in terms of pay. I was still working close to 16 to 18-hour days. And it was about at the year and a half mark when I was taken away from my manager, who I loved, and pivoted over to a different manager, that my experience just really started to change. This new guy couldn't find a single thing that I was doing correctly. He didn't like that I was too girly, as he called it. He didn't like how my nails click-clacked on the keyboard. He didn't like how I dressed. And one day I came into work with a longer cardigan, and he touched his hands together and bowed at me and said, "Ooh, is that a kimono?" And in that moment, I recognized that I was at a turning point in my career. This man was never going to be in the back room pounding the table, demanding that his junior get paid so that he could keep the star talent. He wasn't going to advocate for me. So I thought, hey, I care about money. I care about getting paid. I have a lot of skills. We got to go somewhere else. And that is why I ended up leaving Wall Street for the greener pastures of tech and media, as many young people do, so I could wear ripped jeans and sweatpants to work and make even more money. But then I ended up at BuzzFeed in their digital media strategy sales department and ad sales. And there I was really happy. I made a ton of money, made a lot of friends. And these friends would then ask me, hey, what can you teach me about money? Because you come from Wall Street. And I would help them rebalance their 401ks, pick the right health insurance. And I got the same question so many times, I started putting them on the internet. And the very first video, January 1st of 2021, went viral. And I became Your Rich BFF pretty much overnight.
Yeah, we watched that video, and it's amazing because it would seem so authentic, and all your videos really seem like you being you at that level. But there you were, it seemed like you were fed up with it all and just wanted to explain to the world how this actually works.
Yeah.
And you actually had your own rich BFF, so to speak, your mentor, who was there kind of all along in the early parts of your career. Tell us about Jean Ma, and what did she teach you that was so important?
She was the blueprint. She was everything I wanted to be, and everything that, unfortunately, my parents never were. My parents are Chinese immigrants. They were very focused on frugality and saving, and maybe some people listening to this can relate, but the cookie tin in our living room was actually just a sewing kit hidden. That's the type of people we were, and it didn't feel like being wealthy was something that was for me until I met Jean. And she looked like me. And I looked at her and I was like, you're a young Asian woman. You are killing it at your career. Everybody respects you. Anytime she yelled back at one of the other guys on the trading floor, they would sit down. They would stop talking. They'd be like, yeah, sorry about that. And I wanted that. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be powerful. I wanted to have the glitz and glamour of New York. She would come into work every day with a new designer bag and fling it on the back of the counter where we could put our stuff. And I was like, wow, she doesn't even take care of these bags. She just must have an infinite number of them. And that's why I wanted to be like her at first. It was super shallow. I just wanted to have all of these nice things and live a nice life. And her apartment was fancy and it was the nicest place I'd ever seen. But over time, it became learning lessons that only someone like her could teach me. Her mom needed surgery. She paid for it because she had the means to do that. And suddenly being rich no longer meant having a new designer bag every day, but being able to take care of your family, take care of your loved ones, have that freedom to be able to do that and not worry about bills. So just, she was someone I always wanted to be like, and I was really lucky. She took me under her wing, explained all the personal finance stuff I didn't know. She also gave great advice, like don't text that guy back at 2 a.m., don't get Botox off of Groupon. And, she was my mentor, and I felt very, very fortunate to have her in my life.
Yeah, we all need those types of people in our lives. And I want to get into that difference that you were kind of getting at, which is the difference between being rich and being wealthy. We'll get to that in a little bit. But how did you find your voice as your rich BFF? Was she there all along, and it was the medium and the moment finding each other at that time a couple of years ago when kind of that's what we were doing?
Not quite. So when I was at BuzzFeed, my best friend at work, her name's Allison. Allison was constantly harassing me about helping her with her finances. And she, at the time, had a small food blog. She was a micro-influencer, and I thought it was so cool because every so often she would invite me to go to dinner and we wouldn't have to pay because the meal would just be comped and she would just post about it. And I was like, wow, you're so cool. I can't believe I have an influencer friend. And she was like, I think you should start creating content about money and about finances. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. That's weird. I'm not going to do that. January 1st of 2021 was smack dab, middle of the pandemic. I didn't have anything better to do. My business at work had slowed down quite a bit. I didn't have anything better to do. So very first day of the year, I post that video, and looking back, that timing was the best possible timing because take a guess at what the number one New Year's resolution is every single year.
Save more money?
Nope.
Spend less money?
To lose weight.
Oh, lose weight, right.
I'm not a trainer. I'm not super physically fit, unfortunately, but I am good with money. And the number two New Year's resolution is to be better with your money, to save more, invest more, pay down your debt, what have you. So it just ended up being pretty perfect timing, also coupled with, I think, just more eyeballs, boredom during the pandemic. And, you guys have watched the video, my voice is shaking in that very first TikTok. And I laugh because I watch it back and I'm like, ugh, I can't believe you posted that on the internet. How embarrassing. But it was the best I could do at the time. I was really scared, but it ended up working out.
Yeah, I think it did end up working out. You've got a new book coming out. It's called Rich AF, The Winning Money Mindset That Will Change Your Life. And I got to say, it's brilliant. It's simple in a lot of ways, but sometimes that's what we need, simple lessons that we don't get taught. So you write about the mindset change you learned on Wall Street, which was that rich people were less concerned with scrimping and saving and more focused on investing and growing their wealth. That seems obvious, but that is not obvious to most people. What made that light bulb go out for you?
Well, it was just us having that 90-minute period right after lunch. Anybody who has worked in markets knows that the busiest times are right at open, 9:30, and at 4. And, it's busy throughout the day, but there's typically, for some reason or other, probably because every single trader on the street is eating their sad salad at the desk, things do slow down a little bit. And during that time, people like to have conversations with each other. And they were just trading, ideas of, these are good investments. My cousin has this startup idea. Does anybody want to, join the friends and family round, what have you? And I'm like, why are all of you trying to give your money away? Give it to me, the charity of me. It's my first year in New York. I have 2 nickels to rub together. And it became abundantly clear that no one was stressing the $15 salad. Whereas I feel like in my home growing up, I watched my parents bring lunch to work every single day. They hardly ever went out for lunch. And I'm grateful because some of those incredibly frugal decisions were why they were able to help me pay off my college tuition. I don't have student debt. I'm so grateful to say that. It's a privilege. But the people on Wall Street would hand me their credit card and say, hey, can you go run lunch and just grab it for the row? I'm like, you mean 8 of us? That's
right. We're talking about $500 and you're like, excuse me, one lunch?
And every so often someone would just be in a good mood. They would get a promotion. They would get a raise, whatever. And they'd be like, oh, I'll buy lunch for the desk. I'm like, that's 3 people. And they would get Bobby Van's burgers and fries. I'm like, each individual meal of this is $50. You just bought $50 lunches for 30 people. I'm doing the math in my head. And I'm like, I couldn't, obviously come together with that, even that much money. And I was like, that's so incredible that they're doing that. And they wouldn't even sweat it. And I wanted to get to a point where I wouldn't have to sweat decisions like that. I could just be generous, I could give, and also be able to spend in that way. And I think that was the first time I realized, like, no one was stressing the small purchases. They were always constantly thinking of, like, I have money either in a savings account or, that's coming in soon, or my bonus is coming. I need to figure out where I can put that money so it can start making me more money versus let me hoard this and not buy lunch for the desk.
Yeah, that flip of thinking how money actually makes money, so important. I remember similar money lessons in my life. But most people, as you know, Viv, they play defense with their money.
Yes.
They don't like talking about it. They don't like planning their financial lives. And they don't want to be shamed about their overspending. People hate that. But they're missing out on the growing of the wealth part, right, which is so important, so they don't have to feel defensive. How do we break that mentality with people?
I think a lot of it starts with the words we choose, right? In particular, I would say there is a big emphasis, especially when it comes to women, of confessions of a shopaholic, overspender, frivolous. There are these words that are specifically used to describe poor personal decision making when oftentimes it isn't the main issue. Sure, it's great to be really, really thoughtful and purposeful in the way you're buying things and spending your money, but it's a two-sided equation. We need to be really focusing on telling our communities, but also especially young kids, that we're teaching when they think about money, it's not enough just to not spend. You have to make more. Because think about trying to cut out $5,000 worth of discretionary expenses out of your life. You don't get to have coffee anymore. You are not eating that avocado toast. You probably don't have any more streaming services. You're not doing anything fun. You're not going on vacation. You're not doing XYZ, XYZ. Your life sucks. Do you know how easy it is to ask for a $5,000 raise? No one looks at a $5,000 raise and says, that's unheard of. I don't know a single person who's ever gotten that. Like, you know people who've gotten $10,000, $15,000 raises. You know people who have gotten new jobs and doubled their pay. It is so much easier to make more than it is to spend less.
Yeah, and you really address that in the book. Asking for it is such a big deal, but being prepared to ask that is so important. And folks, you got to check out that chapter in the book. We'll link to it in the show notes. But you mentioned it's the words that we use. It's the vocabulary we use. You are in this milieu now of a lot of finfluencers, a lot of people trying to be money experts or acting like it on, pick your social media channel. What's wrong with most of that advice today?
What I think is scary is that financial literacy I use generously across social media, is not regulated well, right? Like, sure, we have the FTC who says, if you're doing a paid partnership, you need to put hashtag ad, you need to hashtag sponsored, whatever. But like, what if somebody's just wrong? Because we saw that a lot in the pandemic. We saw 15-year-old boys who had somehow opened up a trading account with, their mom's credit card, starting to trade on margin. I don't know how they were doing that.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? Then you have young people who are getting into cryptocurrency for the first time, and they're like, there's no way this goes down to the moon. I'm like, sorry, am I missing something here? Why is everyone so confident about this? And for me to watch those videos that are incendiary, that are, high engagement because people are telling them they're wrong, go just as viral as my videos that are like, hey, like, these are the responsible things you can be doing, if not more viral, because it's not as sexy to talk about a budget. It's not as sexy to talk about a high yield savings account. It's painful because when you misinform someone about a lip gloss, they waste $12. When you misinform someone about a financial decision, that could cost them their life savings. And I just think there needs to be more regulation around who can and cannot say these things. If they are choosing to pursue this, maybe there is some sort of licensing that needs to happen. And I say that as someone who used to have licenses. Or there needs to be some sort of, system where if you spew misinformation so many times, like, there's a penalty. It's just really hard to watch so many people see misinformation and think it's true, because I get the DMs all the time of like, is this real? And I'm like, no.
Yeah,
and
we do too over
sad.
here at Investopedia. We've been watching this evolve for the past 24 years.
I mean,
but
you
really
guys
accelerate.
You guys are the OGs, right? Like, I use you guys as a huge resource in my business because it is a reputable source. And that's what I tell people. Like, how do you know if something's legit or not? It's like, is this corroborated by a reputable source? If I say something and it makes you feel weird in your stomach, I hope it never does, but if it does, can you go online and find it on Investopedia? Can you find it on reputable publications like the Wall Street Journal? Are you able to find it by other professionals who are licensed? Are you able to find it by an attorney who lives in your state or your country, what have you? It needs to be corroborated because nothing I'm telling people is new information. I think what makes Your Rich BFF special is really how I present it and the medium that I present it in, because that's new. But the information's, old stuff. It's not exciting. It's just information.
It's right, but in used correctly and thought through and the way you present it, it really comes together very nicely, which is why you're so effective. Let's get into some of the tactical things in the book, like side hustles.
Yeah.
You talk about them making them low risk and they should actually make you money.
Yes.
A lot of people say they have a side hustle, but it's neither of those things. Tell us about the importance of how to choose a side hustle.
Yeah. First and foremost, low barrier to entry. You already have a car and you want to pick up a couple, trips on Uber, great. But imagine living in New York City. You don't have a car. You've hardly ever driven. And now you want to be an Uber driver? You're going to have to go to a company that's going to lease you a car. That's why all the Ubers you see are black Toyota Camrys. It's from one company. You're going to probably have to, get driving lessons so you know how to drive around the city. Make sure that whatever side hustle you pick is something that you are able to jump into relatively quickly, because the whole point of a side hustle is to fulfill a short-term cash need. So I highly recommend people pick up side hustles when there's a short-term savings goal. So think weddings, things you want to buy a car, you want to put a down payment on a home, what have you. You can pick up a side hustle to supplement your income. But don't be spending more money than you're making, because that doesn't make any sense. So I think when you are choosing a side hustle, make sure it's easy for you to do, it's easy for your lifestyle, the barriers to entry are low, and you're actually making money.
Yeah, great point. Now let's talk about budgeting. You talk about being the CEO of your budget. We talk a lot about being the CEO of your financial life.
Yeah.
You've got to know what's coming in, what's going out. But when it comes to budgeting, you tell people you're in charge of that. Why is that so important?
Because when people think about budgeting, they think about dieting. Let me tell you how many times a crash diet has ever worked for me. None. Never. And it's because when things are so restrictive and you think about things like a diet or a budget in negative connotation, you don't want to do it. Like, why would I do something that's not fun? Why would I do something that is not enjoyable to do and makes my life harder? You want to do things that make your life easier. So I think the flip is like a budget allows you to have everything you want in life in due time. So having a budget that fits your lifestyle is really important. If you are a teacher who has, inconsistent income that only happens during a certain portion of the year, teachers don't get paid in the summer, that is good for one budgeting style. Or say you have a traditional W-2 job and you get paid every twice a month, every single year. That's great for another type of budget. Maybe you're someone who always puts money into the savings account just to grab it back at the end of the month because you're like, oh, I know it's there, haha. Like, there's another budgeting style for that. I just think that we are all different people. We all operate differently. We have different values in our lives. So why should we all use one cut and paste budget when our spending and our, behavior doesn't look the same?
Yeah, they call it personal finance for a reason, because it's
Personal.
personal to you, personal to me. And when you think about that word budget, you're right. It sounds like austerity, but what it really is and what it should be and what you get at in the book and do so well is it's a plan.
Yeah.
Right?
And in my book, I mentioned the thing that the budget was able to buy me, was my first designer bag. And most people don't associate buying a designer luxury piece with a budget, because when you hear budget, you think scrimping and saving and eating peanut butter and jellies. It's like, yeah, I did that in some cases so that I had extra income to do with whatever I wanted. And at the moment, I wanted a black Prada bag, and I was able to get there through a budget. And having that lens of like, that budget's not negative. That budget is the reason I have that purse makes it so much more fun.
Yeah, and it's a better way to look at it. I totally agree with you. All right, let's talk about the difference between being rich and being wealthy. There's a lot of how to get rich on Instagram, on all the social channels. There's not a lot of how to build wealth, which is actually the game.
Yeah.
Maybe a little less sexy, takes a lot longer. It's like a marathon. But let's let's hear your definition of the difference between being rich and being wealthy.
So I'm actually trying to give rich a rebrand because I think the word has been, to your point, villainized for quite some time, right? When you think rich, you're thinking someone who is wearing a gaudy sweater with just monogram designer logos all over it. They drive the most ostentatious lime green, convertible car. They try to show off. They're throwing cash out of the roof of whatever. And when you think wealthy, what I picture at least are like old money families in Martha's Vineyard with their quadrillion thousand square foot summer homes, walking on the beach with their matching navy blue t-shirts and white pants for their little family photo shoot. And they're not worried about working because they know they've got it and, they've got it. They got money in the bank, they got investments in the bank, and that family is going to be taken care of.
Yeah, generational wealth.
Generational wealth. Like, I joke about this. I'm like, I'll know I'm really, really rich, and in this case, wealthy, when my kid can be whatever major they want. Because guess what? Not all majors were available to me as a first-generation immigrant kid. My parents were like, you can be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and since you went to Chicago, maybe a finance person. I was like, okay, sick. Like, I've got 4 to choose from. What will I do? I want that freedom. And so I think I'm rebranding rich to mean the same thing as wealthy, because rich shouldn't just be gratuitous displays of wealth. It should mean getting rich and staying rich. And I think there's power in taking that word back.
Well, maybe you already answered this, but I was going to ask you, when was the first time you actually felt rich or wealthy in your life?
I think I felt rich for the first time when I was able to pay for a vacation that didn't require connecting flights.
Flying direct.
Flying direct, I'm just saying, okay, I have run through so many airports. I am the queen of the gate-to-gate marathon. I'm always the last person. For some reason or other, I'm always on a connecting flight that's a little late and the other one's a little early. And by the time I'm on the plane, I've sweat through my shirt. And that is such a horrible experience to start vacation off of because it's stressful. It causes undue stress. And it's not the comfort of a direct flight or flying first class. It's not that. It's the reassurance that I'm going to get where I need to be and it's not going to freak me out. Because that's what real rich or wealth is like being able to provide yourself with options, being able to provide yourself with the freedom to make decisions that work for you.
Yeah. Owning your time is another way of putting it, right?
Exactly.
Flying direct, saying, I'm going to own my time.
Yeah.
And I can afford that extra couple $100 to fly direct if I have to. I love that. All right. You say in the book also, and you're right about this, you can't save your way to being rich. You have to invest, which is near and dear to our hearts here. Tell folks what you really mean by that.
Yeah. So back in the day, I would say maybe like my grandparents' generation, you could have a single income family. They would be able to buy a standalone single family house, white picket fence, 2.5 kids, golden retriever, tire swing out front. That one income, if saved, would be able to help them go on vacation twice a year and eventually retire at 60, and they would have a pension from the job that they had. Things are a little different for my generation now. First and foremost, pensions are all but gone. The pension was replaced by the 401k, and they're similar, except the 401k is worse in literally every single way. Instead of your company setting money aside for you for retirement, now you have to do it.
It's on you.
It's on you. It's like, if you don't do it, too bad, so sad. So, one, we need to be a little bit more selfish as modern day people in society because we have to protect ourselves. It can't be our company protecting us. And then two, because of the rise of the cost of living, the fact that education has 10x'd in price, housing, depending on where you live, has 3x'd or 10x'd in the past 50 years, and wages have stagnated, you can no longer just save your way to that vacation 2 times a year and retirement at 60. The only way that you are going to make the math work and bridge what you have and what you need to get to is by investing. And I love saying this. Investing is the easiest way for you as one single human being individual to be a 2-income household. Because I make money through labor, but I then take some of that labor money, I invest it, and my money then gets to work hard for me. And that's how my book is set up. It's I work hard for the money and my money works hard for me. Because over time, what you want to happen is think about all of the money coming into you as a pie chart. It's just a big old circle. And for labor, it's red. And for money from investing, it's green, right? At the beginning of your career, this pie chart is almost all red. And you're starting investing, you've got a little sliver of green. But over time, the hope is that that green sliver gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that red piece gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So eventually, instead of using your body or your brain to make money, you're using your money to make money, and you get to kick your feet up, have a lemonade, and go swim in the pool.
Yeah, making your money work for you and putting your money to work, that's the magic. But you mentioned the key word, which is time, right? And that means compounding, the ninth wonder of the world. You need all of those things, but they don't teach us that when we're young. Let's talk about value-based spending, because spending is a part of it. This is not an austerity measure. It's about spending right, but also value-based spending. What does that mean to you?
Value-based spending is this magical equation that I have implemented in my life, and I think everyone should implement in theirs, so that they never, ever, ever have buyer's remorse ever again. Because that used to be something I had all the time. I would literally be walking out of the store and being like, shouldn't have done that. But instead of now thinking about things in terms of dollars or currency, think about it in time. So say you want to go and grab a new pair of fancy yoga pants, okay? Those are, call it $80. If you make $20 an hour, that's 4 hours of work. Are those yoga pants worth it? Ask yourself that question and decide. If you have no yoga pants, yeah, probably. If you have 12 pairs of the exact same black yoga pants in your closet that you haven't touched in a couple months, maybe not. Not trying to subtweet myself here, but you have to really think about what it's worth to you. And by using this equation, and instead of thinking of this is $80, it's 4 hours of time, that has really helped me understand what something is valued in my eyes. It's made spending on food and dining out, as well as vacations, really easy. I can always justify it. I'm like, let's go. For paying full price for clothing, absolutely not. For spending to go to events that I don't want to be at because it's some sort of social obligation, sorry, I'll send a gift, but I'm not coming to your wedding. I'm not flying out to, Nashville for your bachelorette. It's not happening. And that's because I am now able to calculate how many hours I would need to work to do any of those things. And some things are worth it and some things are not. Yeah,
that's a great way of looking at it. And you break it down so well in the book, folks. Again, we'll link to the new book coming out in the show notes. Let's do a lightning round here, some quick myth busting, if you don't mind. Tell me what you feel about this. Rich people are lazy, right or wrong?
100%. Rich people don't want to work. They want their money to work hard for them. They only like talking about working hard, but they want to kick back.
Yeah. All debt is bad debt. True or false?
Absolutely not. Debt is only bad when poor people take it on. When rich people take on debt, it's called leverage, and we put them on Time magazine. I just think that the way we talk about debt should not be morally positive or negative. It should be neutral because it's just a tool.
Yeah. I love the lesson you learned playing Monopoly with your friend out in the Hamptons about debt, because they actually knew how to lever up.
I didn't know how to play Monopoly
and then take the entire table. When it comes to paying down debt, are you a snowball person or an avalanche person, or does it depend on the scenario?
I'm an avalanche person because I'm an Aries and I'm incredibly impatient. So I'm trying to pay the least in interest and do it as fast as possible.
Yeah, it's up to each individual, but you have to decide which one you're going to do if you do have that debt. All right, the importance of the FU number.
So important. Everybody should have an FU number, and for anybody who doesn't know, this is how you calculate it. You close your eyes. Don't close your eyes if you're driving right now, but you envision your perfect year. How much money does it take to support your lifestyle for that year? Think about things like mortgage payments, the food you have to eat, any vacations you want to go on. Does Fido need heartworm medication? Do your kids need help paying for school? Whatever, everything. And add all of that up. How much money do you need that year? Then divide that number by 0.04. That is, the result is your FU number. That 0.04 essentially represents 4%, which is a very, very conservative return. There are high yield savings accounts that are returning 5% right now.
Sure.
So 4% is essentially what you can count on getting with that money invested. And essentially, once you have your FU number invested, you can live every single year off of the interest you earn or the capital gains that you're getting, and you never have to work again, and you can still support that exact lifestyle you had envisioned in your head.
Yeah, there it is, folks. A calculation that will give you your own FU number. So do you have an FU number, Vivian, too?
I do. So my FU number is 25 million. It feels large, but there's the rationale behind this, okay? 25 million backs into $1 million a year. This covers mortgage payments on 2 homes. It covers any sort of education costs that I'm going to have to be paying for kids. It's going to cover any sort of pet needs. It's going to cover any sort of transportation. It works in a huge budget for me to party. I'm going on vacation. You will catch me on the beaches. You will catch me at the lakes. You will catch me near water bodies, only in warm weather. The temperature has to be somewhere between 64 and 78 degrees at all times, wherever I'm at. But $1 million gives me the perfect life, and I never have to work again.
Yeah, you got to have that number, and that's what we always talk about here on this podcast and on Investopedia. What does it cost to be you? You figure that out, folks. Everybody should do that. So important. All right, best book about money that you've read besides your own, which is coming out soon.
I will say I do love the old classic, Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason. It's just so fun to hear him talk about assets and liabilities in the form of like buying donkeys at the bazaar. And listen, my content is a little bit more Coachella tickets than donkeys and fruits and vegetables, but it did make a lot of sense. It's also very short and thin, and it's a very unintimidating read, and I just really enjoyed it. It was the first one that I ever bought and read.
I just reread it, and it is just full of common sense, and you can read a lot of that common sense rewritten over the generations, but that book, kind of the OG of how to think about money and how to think about debt, but also how to think about growing your wealth. We love that choice. All right, what's your favorite movie or TV show about money?
Okay, I've got a couple. So I like Billions, but earlier seasons. I thought it was a bit more rah-rah hedge fundy versus like, oh, this is so convoluted, like, you know, people are getting divorced left and right. There's weird stuff happening. And then I would say in terms of movies, I have always just really loved The Big Short because they do those asides with like Selena Gomez at the craps table and Margot Robbie in the tub to explain some of those concepts. And I'm like, how cool is that? I've never seen, you know, something on the big screen take the time to actually explain a financial concept like they did.
I love it. And they address camera, so it's not like it's part of the movie. They're like, time out.
Yeah. Let's
all make sure we're not getting confused here. Great choice there. Can't agree with you more. All right, let's go out on this. You know, Investopedia is a site founded on our financial terms in our dictionary. We got to know, what is Vivian Two's favorite financial term and why?
I think I like giffen goods because the way it was explained to me, I couldn't even think of an example, but I learned about this in my economics class in college, and they were like, oh, it's essentially something that like over time as people make more money, they buy fewer of. And I was like, wait, what do you buy fewer of when you make more money? When you just buy more of it? And the great example that my professor taught was economy seats on planes. And over time, as you make more money, you start to buy first class tickets or you fly private. So I just thought it's like a cool economic principle. Not sure if it's super relevant, but I like it.
We love it. And you're the first person on this podcast, in the history of this podcast, to come up with that term. And we were going to link to you on that term just because you said it. Vivian Two, a.k.a. your rich BFF and the author of a new and terrific book, Rich AF, The Winning Money Mindset That Will Change Your Life. Thank you so much for joining The Express.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And if you guys want to buy the book, you can at richaf.me.
and we will link to that as well in the show notes.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this very special edition of the Investopedia Express. The Express is a weekly podcast that drops every Monday and helps set the educated investor up for the week ahead. Join us wherever you listen to podcasts and sign up for the Investopedia Express newsletter that comes to your inbox every weekday morning by clicking on the QR code.